Up next is Dorothy Foster. Dorothy, originally from England, has got an incredible business background. She was the director of the International School of Nice and a nightclub owner, and I can't wait to hear more about what has led her to become an educational consultant for the teenagers here on the Côte d'Azur.
Having successfully launched 3 businesses, bilingual mum to 2 and entrepreneur Antonia Bowes-Brown has connected with thousands of people, both French and international, since moving to the French Riviera. These connections allow her to speak with successful local businesses and inspirational people about life here on the Côte d'Azur and share it with you. Welcome to the Riviera Firefly podcast with your host, entrepreneur, and my mum, Antonia Bowes-Brown.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Dorothy Foster.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. Thanks for popping in to see me. I met you many moons ago, I think, originally through the Professional Women's Network.
That's right, yes.
What was your role there?
I used to be vice president, but I've always been an active member of the PWN and still go to the lunchtime meetings every first Tuesday of every month. But I don't go to a lot of the presentations now.
And so I would have seen you up there on stage with a mic. I think many times I've seen you. You've been on stage with a mic. And so hopefully you're not feeling too bad with this black mic in front of us here.
No.
But then I got to know you through the jury of the Riviera Business Club as part of last year's nomination and the award. And that was great. Again, I got to see you on stage, chatting up on stage. But I think that I've heard little bits through the years from you, but I would just love to dig in a little bit deeper into your background and what brought you to where you're at now. And actually, you've been working with my son, Louis, getting him ready for university applications.
Yes.
So we'll get onto that a bit later. Take me back to childhood. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in St Helens, which is an industrial part of the north of England. I was actually born in Liverpool. My mother was Irish, and then I was adopted at 6 months by a couple that they lived in St Helens. And St Helens was an industrial town, very, very industrial. So essentially, I wasn't very good at studying academics at all. I failed my 11 plus. And so I went to a technical school. I was great at shorthand typing. And so I went off to the tech, where they said, well, you can do shorthand typing, you can do a course in business studies. So I thought, oh, fine, okay. And then after that, they kind of tagged on the end. Well, we put our students through 2 A-levels a year. 4 A-levels, and I thought this is ridiculous. So I said, okay, as you do, when you're 16, you think, because I left school at 16, with 1 O-level. So anyway, I did it, and then it's kept in my mind ever since that time what the effect of inspirational teachers are that believe in you. And so I had a teacher that taught me economics. Didn't know what economics was at that time, but I did it. And I was hopeless at it for months and months, and then suddenly something clicked in my head, and so I ended up getting really good grades. And then they said, well, you should apply to university. So I went home and said to my dad, well, this is what happened. And he said, well, what do you do there? What's university? What do you do there? He said, you'd be better off getting a job. And so, well, I said, no, I'm going to go give it a try. So I enrolled at Liverpool University. I got in there and did a degree in philosophy and economics. I wasn't a brilliant scholar, but I survived it. And then I thought, oh, this is quite nice. And so then I did a certificate of education for teaching in HE. And then I went on to Manchester University to do a master's degree, because I was very much involved in industrial relations. And then I started work. I got a job with a trade union on the docks in Liverpool, and was their district organiser for the Tobacco Workers Union. And then after that, decided to follow a career, and then ended up teaching economics in Poly in St Helens, and then in Liverpool, and then I moved down to the south. I got married and moved down to the south of England. So after that I stayed there, and later I decided I met my present husband, and He was a top designer in Southampton at that time, a graphic designer, and then we decided to up and move to France to do the Peter Mayle thing. This is in 1988. And it arose because one day we were sat on the beach in La Lavandou, probably about 1987, and our daughter was about 4 at the time, and the sun was shining. It was January, the skies were blue, and we thought, why on earth are we going back? I was run ragged because I'd set up 2 businesses since then and sold them on. One was a bistro, and the other one was a fashion wholesaler and reseller, top designer names. And my husband was running around doing his job as a designer. We thought, well, there's more to life than this, so we went back home. I sold my business, and he sold his side to his partner, and we moved to La Garde-Freinet, lock, stock and barrel.
Wow.
We had 7 cats who were shipped over, and a dog. And I remember at that time, having packed everything up, it was a month before we're due to move, so I ring up the French veterinary service to say, we're bringing these. Oh, well, madame, you have to pay tax on this. He said, because it's obvious you're a business.
Oh, no.
He said, nobody has 7 cats. He said, and so I was distraught, ready to call it all off, and then I rang again the next day. I got some other guy, some functionaire, and he said, madame, this is very, very simple. He said, you send 4 cats one day to Nice and 3 cats 2 days later to Marseille. That was my first exposure to how things are done in France. So
there are always solutions. You just have to figure out which box you're going to tick.
But when I was going back to when I was younger, I tell kids this because people think they think, oh, well, I'm not good at school, I'm going to be a failure, and you're not, because we're not pigs in pods. We actually develop at many different rates and paces. And when I left school at 16 with nothing, I then rebelled, of course, because I think I lived in the best period of all time, because I was at the time when there was the mod movement, and I was a mod. And then I used to go to Northern Soul dues in Wigan Casino, all-nighters when I was 15. And then, of course, I became a hippie after that. The year of 1967, 1968, I took off and went round France and ended up in Mykonos and the things you did then, and went to anti-Vietnam War demo at Grosvenor Square and stuff like that, and travel around Europe. But I actually found myself, and I thought, well, I'm not the dunce that people think I might be. I think I've got some grit, and always had this desire to get out of the north of England. I thought this just wasn't me. So I ended up living in the south of France and having a house in La Garde-Freinet with cats, dogs, animals, all kinds of stuff. Our daughter went to the local school, and it was the best thing we ever did. So
what moved you over to this way? Cause
I think it was because there was no work. Mm-hmm. And after 3 years of doing all the usual renovations and living the idyllic life, I used to sit there in the vineyard and look at the vines thinking, well, is this it for the rest of my life? What am I going to do? And so I visited the ISN once, because International School of Nice, because my husband was doing a brochure for them. I tagged along, and I happened to say to them, if you need anyone to teach economics or anything, then I'm your person. And they did. And so that's how I got in there. It's all by chance here. It really is.
It's chance, but it's also seizing the opportunities.
It is.
And going for
the moment. You seize the moment. So I started commuting 3 days a week from La Garde-Freinet, and in the end we thought, it's too much, let's just move over there. And then my husband's business took off even more, and then I got a full-time job, and then I started to move up in the ranks, became IB coordinator, head of the high school, and then ended up as director there.
And if you went back to your 16-year-old, 15-year-old self, what would you say? Because that's amazing to go from, a few O-levels.
No, one O-level.
One O-level.
One O-level. In needlework. Needlework.
Very important needlework.
Yes.
To then be the director of an international school.
Yeah.
That is an incredible journey, isn't it?
I think, to tell you the truth, having studied psychology and being a psychologist now, a lot of it is to do with grit and resilience, and not accepting your status in life. I knew that I was very different to everybody else. I never really made friends very easily, although I'm a sociopath now. I always am. But at that time, I just felt as though I was completely out of my world. I used to sit in my bedroom and listen to trains that used to go past, thinking, I've just got to get out of here. And my parents were just lovely, but they couldn't understand me. We didn't have the same genes.
What jobs were they in?
My dad was a crane driver, and my mother worked in a bingo hall.
Wow,
they both left school at 14.
And I was just reading this yesterday.
Yes.
It's 10% of people that come from the ouvrier are not expected to go. Well, no, only 10% go to uni.
Oh, yes.
90% don't, even now.
Even now. Yeah. But I just went ahead and did it myself. I was always entrepreneurial, and I just had this being a rebel, I just had this idea that there is a different life out there. And it was at the time when you felt as though the world was your oyster. It was swinging London, and I used to hitch down to London, go to Bieber, and then hitch back again to the north, and thought, this is life outside of St Helens. And so I got out.
And it's given you amazing experience as well, in many different, so fashion.
Yes.
And then restaurate, like in the restaurant business, and in schools, running a bar.
A nightclub.
Which ones have given you the most challenges?
The bar nightclub.
Yeah.
No hesitation.
That was here or in England?
In Antibes.
In Antibes, okay.
Yes. Because it was at the time the house music was coming to the fore in 2000, 2005. You know, there was the big clubs opening up in Ibiza, the big clubs in London, and down in France, you know, there was nothing, no music bars or anything. So I thought there's a good business opportunity here, and so I found a bar and rented it off a guy in Antibes and did it out, and brought down a DJ who was resident DJ every night, and then I used to bring DJs over from London every weekend to come and do sets, and I can tell you it was a blast. You just couldn't move in there.
Wow.
We made a lot of money until the 2011, the Twin Towers. After that, because most of my clientele were boat people, the boats turned tail and left Antibes because the owners were very frightened about being in Europe, and the business really went down again, and we had to just recreate ourselves. But it was never the same. It wasn't the same rocking place as it was before. But we had some great music and great DJs. Some top DJs came down, and it was great. But at the time, it did get very heavy because, you know, there was problems with the authorities, problems with the police, of course.
Because there used to be sort of mafia-y type things in some of the towns, didn't there? And you had to sort of watch you didn't step on anyone's toes and all that kind of thing.
Well, I never found that. I always found people very helpful. Maybe it's because I'm a woman, and it was unusual to have a woman running such an institution. And it was at the same time as I was the head of the international school as well. Yeah.
You were doing them both at the same time?
Yes, I was.
Wow.
Yeah, I had people managing the bar.
You must have been the coolest director of the ISN.
Well, I made sure that, you know, there was never anything dark about the place. It was always above board and always clean.
Yeah.
And I found the people I dealt with in the authorities and that very helpful. No problems at all.
And so then you went from the ISN and you moved to, was it to Skema?
Yes, I did.
It was Ceram to start with.
It was Ceram at that time, because they were really expanding their international outlook. And it was the Ceram. And
so people might not know, Skema is like a business school, it's after you finished your baccalaureate, you might go and do a preparation course, and lots of people then go to Skema, or do they do the prep courses there?
You can do the both. Some students come straight from high school and go into the bachelor programme, which is a 4-year programme, and then others, they do the prépar and they come into the master's degree. And so it's very flexible, and Skema is one of the top business schools in France now. It's right up there in the top 5.
What was your role there?
Well, I was brought in to do international university partnerships, because at that time it was the outreach to travelling the world for students, and so I was responsible for setting up partnerships in about 8 countries, including the States and Singapore and many parts in Europe, where they did transfer degrees. So we'd have an agreement with the university that a student could apply to them under preferential circumstances and be guaranteed a place. and they could either spend 1 year there, 2 years there, and then normally they would spend 2 years and they'd get a dual degree. They'd have 2 years with SCEMA and 2 years with
which is an
partner.
incredible thing.
Oh yes, and now the SCEMA has got campuses in Belo Horizonte in Brazil, and in Raleigh, North Carolina. And so it's an outreach now. International education is outreaching now. And this is why these students today are so great. They're so switched on, because they travel and they're really serious about what they do. Yeah.
And I think that you have to be, don't you? Because I know SCEMA is fee paying.
Yes.
Similar prices probably to the UK universities now.
Yes, it is about, yes.
And I know
yes,
from my cousins
yes.
who are sort of all in their, late teens, 20s, they were saying to me how discerning they're getting about the courses they go on, because they want to get value for money now.
Yes, they're the consumer.
Yeah, they're the consumer, and they're looking to make sure it's going to give them a better visibility and job profile, I guess, for when they leave.
But the university system all over the world is very stratified now. There are the top universities, then there's what's equivalent to the Russell Group, the top 10 universities, 20 universities in the UK. Then you have the other universities, there's the ones that were created in the 1960s, like Sussex, and then below that you have the polytechnics, and then below that you have the colleges of higher education that can offer degrees. And I always think it's important to get to the highest level of status university within a capability, because it's not necessarily it's what you do, it's where you go. Yeah, it's important on the CV.
And this is important to say. So I got back in contact with you again recently because my 16-year-old, great, he's a great guy, he's a great kid, but it is difficult as a parent talking to your teenage about the future. 12 months to them seems like an absolute lifetime.
Yes, it
so
is.
You set up a new business recently helping students because of your experience at the ISN and also at SCEMA. You basically have this, file of facts full of all the important numbers in the world, I guess.
Yes, I do.
All the places and the knowledge.
Yeah, I've got a good database of contacts in most universities, which I've always kept. But it's so hard for these kids today. It's nothing like when I was a kid or when you were a kid, because today they're facing a world where it's harder than it's ever been. They're fully documented, for example. The privacy's non-existent. Yeah. There's never-ending exposure to harassment and pressure. And on the job side, they never know whether they'll get a secure job, how long it'll be for, whether they'll be on these kind of gig type of contracts where they go from one job to another, no pensions. They've got media pressure, and then they've got the academic achievement. It's very daunting, and most of them are very ill prepared for all this. And because I think, on the other hand, in terms of psychology, many psychologists describe the teenage brain is like driving without brakes, and they take risks, they act on impulse, they seek novel experiences. And it's interesting that in the 70s in psychology, the psychologists believed that the brain matured at 3 years of age.
Gosh,
probably most kids actually still they are. But,
haven't they just extended adolescence to 24?
They
just said
nowadays,
that
nowadays it's conceded that they become adults in about their mid-20s. To be able to reason and to decide on the path, really for them.
And so many choices. I think I see that with Louis.
Yes.
Particularly as an international living here, he could do France, he could go to Europe, he could go to England, America. They have way more choice than we had as well.
Oh yes,
I think.
They do.
Which it doesn't necessarily isn't always a good thing.
But they can't avoid that now, because to exist you have to be international, because the world has become larger. And where they can communicate with kids in all continents through the medium of English, and they're all studying roughly the same thing. It's just like this global movement of all these youngsters who are out there with great achievements, great skills, lots of enthusiasm, but the jobs world is shrinking and changing for them.
Yeah.
And so it's only those who kind of have the resilience to rise above that and to make their own mark that really get these top jobs. The idea of getting a job at PricewaterhouseCoopers, you're in a pool there of about 4,000 people every time they apply.
And it's interesting that you said earlier on about choosing the university would you say that's more important than the actual course? Or
I think basically what we have to do is with youngsters is to be able to discover their aptitudes, abilities, and their the inclinations.
So you do that through psychometric testing?
I do that through psychometric testing. And then once we know where they're coming from, because psychometric testing is it's not something you can manipulate. It's all random questions that gets put together by algorithms, and that you come out at the end with some summary of the type of person who this is. And these fundamental traits tend not to change.
I did one when I was at school, when I was about 17, I guess, and I still got it somewhere, but it was all typed out, not computerised. Yeah. It's really funny to look back at it, and although it took me a while to get there, what's written in it is what I'm doing now.
Exactly.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah, it's not strange at all, because it's your character. So when the students have all these great ideas about, I want to be a rock star, I want to, be a model or something like that. And then we have to come down to realism in terms of what they can do. And my passion, my mission now is to try to get them on that track, so that A, they won't be disappointed and they'll be fulfilled in what they do, and they'll be interested and they'll succeed, and B, the parents won't lose a lot of money when they dump a course and go and change it to another course.
Which I hear is happening quite a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
So
I've been
every
at
time
Christmas, 2 people I bumped into, their kids said, oh yeah, that's £9,000 plus living and stuff, because they went and switched.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that by giving them this guidance in these 3 critical years between the ages of 15 to 18, that's the key. Because before then they're still finding themselves, they're still a bit spotty and a bit off their head a bit in adolescence and moody and that. But they're starting to get a bit more serious when they're about 15 and a half, 16, and then that's the time that they really have to decide what they want to do, where they want to go. Yeah. And
in tandem, they need to be building up their experience for their dossier.
You're absolutely right, because they can forget about getting into a good university without a dossier of work experience under their belt. And so this is why now I advise students to start doing bits and pieces of work at 15. You might not get paid for it, but go and volunteer with an animal charity or go and help look after kids. And then the critical year is that year between the grades 11, grade 12, just before the back. And they've got to get some meaningful work experience which relates to their profile and relates to what they're going to write, what they want to do when they actually finish university.
Which is very challenging. Well, you've seen with Louis, he's looking at 2 different paths in a way, because he's, kind of very creative, and then he's got the whole other end of it. So he's talking at the moment about going into architecture as one of his ideas, but to go and get experience in that field to build up a portfolio, really challenging for a 16-year-old.
It is, but this is where family and friends come in, and contacts.
Yeah.
And just putting it out there. I'll work for nothing. I just want to even come and observe what you do, just so I want to see if this is something I like.
And save yourself $9,000 if it's not.
And just go and beg. People. And just say, I will make the tea, I'll do anything for you if I can just get an experience of what you're doing. And most people, they know what it's like. They've got kids of their own, and so they're very nice with youngsters, as long as they behave themselves.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And so we've got some teenage parents listening. I've got that group Teen Riviera, so they're there knowing that when you're speaking to a teenager, it's always negotiation.
It is, yes.
Discussion, that kind of thing. So they're going to say, okay, I heard this woman, Dorothy, who you can sit with. The teenager wants to know what they're signing up for. Yeah. So how does a typical session, that first session, go?
Yeah. I always involve the parents and the student to begin with, and we talk through what the testing is about first, because students have this horror of that word, testing. And we just need to find out about you. And it's not, you can't describe yourself, because you have certain traits that you think you have, but you can't go any deeper than that. And we need to know not just whether or not you're mathematical or you're artistic, or we need to know basically how you tick. And so this psychometric test will bring this out, not just in terms of your character, but in terms of your interests. Because you're randomly answering 200 questions, and suddenly something comes out there, some repetitive streak. So this is what we need to know a bit more deeply about you than you could actually tell us about yourself. And then after that, we will, once we've got the results of the testing, I'll see the parents and the students again one more time, and we'll talk about the results. And then we'll discuss some of the types of profession that these tests will come up with, and what the student, what he or her thinks about them. And then after that, if they agree, we need to find out, the next thing is, do you want to go to university? Because many students don't. Mm-hmm. So we talk about different professions, different apprenticeships, what they could do at 18. We always have a chat about gap years and that. And then once they've decided their pathway, we decide on, okay, which university, which country do you want to study in? After that, which type of university do you want to study in? And what do you want to do there? So it's a funnel system. And so then we get to a possibility of having maybe 5 or 6 possible universities. They could be all over the world. Mm-hmm. And then we then look at the requirements for those universities and start ticking the box or crossing them off, because for some students their profile wouldn't fit that university. So it's funnel until we get to a final list, and then we do the application.
And many of the universities do seem to be taking into account that the back is so hard, and that the OIB and the IB is harder.
They do, yes. I had a student that had a moyenne of 12.5, and they got into a Russell Group university.
Yeah, which when I saw those the other day, I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. But I hadn't really appreciated how negatively marked the kids are here, you know. It is tough for them.
It's easy to get -3 on 20, isn't it? Because they take marks off.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Rather demoralising for the kid, but yes, I think that the bac français, even the international option, whatever, is so rigorous. Because I know I used to teach at CIV, and I always was with the French teachers, the French section, and it was just ruthless, really, what these kids had to go through. And I remember the poor kids in the prepar, they were just run ragged because they were working 6 days a week from 8 till 6 every day. And it's no surprise that the dropout rate on that is so high. It just puts them through the mill.
Do you think that education, both here and in England, needs to change? I've been watching some of Ken Robinson.
Yes.
And you were sort of talking earlier about how it's very regimented. You came into your own later, but we kind of treat everyone that's 5 years old or 10 years old needs to be doing X, Y, Z.
Yes.
And people have different life paths.
They do have. It's funny you say that, because I brought a little poem here, and I thought, I didn't know whether you want me to read it. It's from the children's book called Wild Child by Jan Wallace, and it says, they caught all the wild children and put them in zoos. They made them do sums and wear sensible shoes. They put them to bed at the wrong time of day and made them sit still when they still wanted to play. They scrubbed them with soap and they made them eat peas, and they made them behave and say pardon and please. They took all their wisdom and wildness away. That's why there are none in the forests today.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful? Yeah.
Isn't it how we treat our kids now? Yeah. And I've got a grandson, he's now 5, and I realise with him, he's not progressing or regressing, he's just different to all the other kids in class. It's just as other kids are different, yet they're still putting him into this grade and then the next grade and the next grade, and he's clearly not managing those grades. And so the best thing for him to do is to just be. The kids can stay down, they can go up. There's no law that says they have to be in a certain grade at a certain age. It depends on how they're progressing and the type of person they are.
And yet, I think it's the parents that are so competitive. You know, I know here at Kiddieland, if I want to keep a child in a group because they haven't got all the learnings in place to move up to the next level linguistically, it's the parents that are like, no, I want them to be with the older ones. And you think, well, they're just going to...
And all that does is make them conscious of the fact that I am not as good as anybody else, and so you fulfil the prophecy. Yeah. You stop trying.
Yeah, and that positivity, again, Ken Robinson, you know, positivity, creativity. Yeah. You touched on it earlier, is about teachers and inspirational teachers.
Oh, yes.
What a difference. That can make or break a kid's school career. Yes. And I've met quite a few teachers in my life, and I wonder why they went into teaching, actually. Because it wasn't for the love of teaching something to a child or working with children, from what I can understand. It must have been other motivational reasons.
Or perhaps it was easier because your kids are at that school, or as you pick up the kids at 4 o'clock, you go home, you have long holidays.
So what needs to change for you? Are there any things that you can see in the education system that need to...
I think that I quite admire the Scandinavian system, where the kids don't go to actually learning things until they're 7. And between the ages of 4 and 7, they learn social skills, how to work with each other. And although I say that, on the other hand, in Scandinavian countries are very rich, and they can afford to have systems like that, you know. But I think we need to just give them some space, and a bit of space to be young and to enjoy, and then their natural inquisitiveness will bring them back when they see what their friends are doing, and also not to underestimate the importance of their friends in their lives. And I think they're probably, it's adolescents, their friends are more important to them than their parents.
For sure.
No doubt about it. Yes. And so you've got to just grit your teeth, get through that, and just be supportive, but have boundaries of where you don't go over this, but it's fine what you're doing, and praise them.
And stay calm. Now, I know that you also, but with the psychology, you can help the children with techniques for revision, because it's so stressful for them. And, you know, if you've had an uninspirational teacher talk to you for 2 hours and then nothing's gone in, and then you come out with, you know, some photocopies, you know, I wasn't very good at revising. My room was very tidy, and my charts on my wall for revision looked very good, but I didn't actually do any. But you can help them here, can't you?
I can, and I'm lucky that having done, graduated in psychology at age 62, when I actually, probably I should have been retired by then, but I decided to give myself this challenge. As a result of this, it's opened up access to so much academic information, and one thing that I specialise in are learning skills, and so now I advise students on how to learn. Don't forget about sitting with a book for 3 hours. We don't learn that way anymore. Your brains are not programmed to do that. You learn this way, and so I give them how to take notes, how to actually retain information, reasoning skills and critical thinking skills on how, because they don't know how to critically think. They'll take,
and you're right that their brains are different to even mine, because they're using screens and so they're learning in a far different way to us.
But I think that's the important thing I feel is very fulfilling, apart from helping kids to get into good universities, is to teach them how to function cognitively. Yes.
And have that light bulb go on.
And have the light bulb to think, oh God, I didn't realise it was as easy as this. And just little skills like working backwards in a math equation or something like that.
Which must give them so much confidence, where I feel right now they're more taught in a negative manner than perhaps in a positive manner. So they come home sort of saying, like you're saying, -3 out of 20 for a dictation.
Yes.
It's not very inspiring. I don't know if that's just to the Anglos, that because we're more, I find that our methods are maybe more on the positive praise side. My kids certainly don't feel inspired to go and work harder if it's done like that. But it might just be a culture thing, I'm not sure.
It's like, if you have an animal, you're training a dog, you don't beat the dog all the time. You actually encourage it, you praise the dog. and give it a little treat every time it does something nice.
Yeah.
And then they're anxious to please.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
So
it's the
true.
same.
Yeah.
With everybody, it's motivation. Yeah.
Right, well, I'm feeling motivated to go back and see my teenager in a bit. So, what about Côte d'Azur living? So, just moving here and stuff. You were part of the PWM, which was a great way to meet people.
Mm-hmm.
Got any other tips to share with people?
I think I like sitting in cafes because I talk to people. But then, you know, I embarrass my daughter and things. You know,
Don't we all?
And my husband. You know, but. I was yesterday. I went up to the lighthouse in Antibes with the dog, and it was full. And so I asked this lady, "Can I sit with you?" You know, in the cafe, and we started talking. Of course, so now we're good friends. We're going to meet up for coffee, and so it just works like that. If you show an interest in people, you can have a social life which is diverse and which is really, really expansive. And also, you have to work at it as well. If you sit back and wait for people to contact you, you'll be sitting forever. Because not everybody's the same. So there's that, and like Professional Women's Network, and make coffee dates with anybody that you can find. Stand at school gates, say, you know, where you come from, or have you been here long, and then, we must meet up. And do that. Yeah.
And there are so many Facebook groups now, actually.
There are, I was going to say on Facebook, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which ones would you go to? Have you got any?
No, I don't know Facebook well enough because I'm a dinosaur.
I know you recently joined.
It's really stressful for me to actually navigate Facebook.
You're more old school, so if people wanted to get in contact as we're talking about it, you've got your email address, which is profil without an E, so profil.edu21@gmail.com.
Right.
And they can also call you.
Yeah.
So 0493 951253.
Yeah.
And maybe by Facebook they can link in with you.
Absolutely, yes, I'll be very happy to. You tell me what to click on when I read them.
So email, phone could be the best way. Yeah. What about when you're chilling out and you're not busy working and working with teenagers? Are you into reading?
Oh, yes. And into animals. I do a lot of work with animal charities because I'm passionate about animals. And I do read a lot. I've got hundreds of books. I've never thrown a book away since I was 14.
Oh, wow.
And
it's painful throwing books away, isn't it? No,
because to me, not having an identity, a parent, that's my life. And that's how I remember when I bought my first book. I was 14 at the time. I remember where I was, where I bought it, what I was doing, and so to me they've defined my life, my books. Of everything, I'm curious, I will read anything.
And have you got a favourite book that you've read recently?
I have. It's one. As I said, I'm passionate about animals and about the problems we have today with the attack on our wildlife. And so there's one book which I kept with me for years. It's called Inherit the Dust by the photographer Nick Brandt. And it's a book of beautiful black and white photographs and a commentary which is based in Africa, in Kenya. And it illustrates the escalating changes to the natural world which is caused by the impact of man. And in places where animals used to roam, but they don't roam anymore.
Oh, fantastic. I love Kenya, I love animals.
Yes.
And I'm very passionate about the environment too, so that's going to...
Yeah, and for me, I live my life for animals. I adore them, any shape, form.
And you've got, because I met one of your dogs the other day, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
In training.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Same as my two, yeah. And whereabouts, what do you help out in refuges, or do you...
Yes, I help out in the SPA. Not the SPA, I got the dog from there. But in Refuge du Flot, where I've adopted many dogs. And I work with Leslie Frazier a bit for the Chat de Mercantour.
Oh, yeah. And they're always looking for supplies, aren't they?
Oh, yes.
What do they need mostly? Is it like...
Money.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, you know what I do? I just give a donation every month. It's nothing to me. Yeah. I don't even see it go out. It's tiny, 10, 20 euros a month. And it just goes out. But for them... It's quite
and they can buy exactly what they need then.
Yes, because they do need money, because she ferries wild cats down to the vet in Antibes, and although she gets a discounted rate, she still has to pay for the neutering.
Yeah.
And so she relies on the money she generates through the annual sale at Mougins School every December. And people donate things and they cook things and they sell them. But it's mainly through donations that she has to survive. And she doesn't want people to go and stroke cats. She wants people to give money to feed them and to get them spayed. Because she often lets cats out again, once they're spayed, into the area that she lives in, which is up in the mountains, just north of Nice. And so any kind of fundraising that we can do for her would be brilliant.
Excellent.
She's such a passionate woman.
Yeah.
Oh, she's just one of the best people I've ever met. She's brilliant. She devotes her life to this. Yeah.
And so that's another way that people can meet, actually, is through anything that you're passionate about. It could be the refugees, it could be animals. You can go and donate your time as well.
You can. So. And often we have a lot of marathons and half marathons, and people can run for a particular cause. So if a group of, say, 10 people decided to run in aid of the cats or in aid of the SPA or something, and ask friends to just put €5 a piece in, that
it quickly mounts up.
And to donate it to these charities. Yeah.
What about an inspirational quote? You must have a mantra that Dorothy, or many, I guess.
There's so many inspirational women around. I really shall say.
More and more, it's great, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. But I thought about this quite hard, and I remember I used to read Nora Ephron, and she's an American author. She's quite political at the time, and she wrote once, "Be the heroine of your life, not the victim."
Love it. Yeah. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because you are in charge of your own destiny, actually.
You decide when to make your turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if things are not doing well, you cut your losses and you quit and you move on.
Yeah.
You don't sit and weep.
Yeah.
Just get on with it. Yeah.
Well, Dorothy Foster, love it. Great way to end our little chat in the podcast. We're going to go offline now so that I can book Louis in for his revision tips.
Excellent. And thank you very much for
it's been
inviting
my pleasure.
Me. It's great to talk to you as usual.
Thanks, Dorothy.
This episode was brought to you by Riviera Firefly for Côte d'Azur Living by your host and my mum, Antonia Beauvoisin Brown. Please subscribe, like and share. Until the next time, au revoir les fireflies.